Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about characteristics and properties of sound waves. In this lesson we are going to explain how pitch depends on a wave frequency. Also then we're going to analyze how sound loudness depends on amplitude. At the end we're going to describe the effect of loud sounds on a human hearing. To start our lesson, let's start with the first characteristic. We want to talk about the pitch. What is the meaning of pitch? Pitch is how high or low you think the sound is. There are two factors the pitch depends on. The first one is the frequency. The second one is the wavelength. The frequency, it's number of cycles over time. Okay? What about the wave length? The wavelength, you're talking about the distance between two adjacent points, for example, between two troughs, or the distance between two crusts. To understand how these factors affect on pitch, look at this figure. Here in this figure, the first one, as you see, as written on this figure, high frequency wave. High frequency wave, it means more number of cycle, okay, and it means here, so what is the relationship between high frequency and the pitch here? High frequency, it means high pitch, okay, and the wavelength here, it's gonna be what? It's gonna be shorter. So again, high frequency, high pitch. What about the wavelength? As you see the distance here, here the wavelength, short wavelength. The second figure here, as you see here, low frequency wave. If you want to compare between these two figures, the same time, okay, but here more, and the first figure more cycles than the second one. So here, as you see, here the lower frequency, it means lower pitch. And what about the wavelength? As you see, longer wavelength. To understand the relationship between frequency and the pitch and the wavelength, listen carefully to this video.
There are many different kinds of sounds. Some sounds are high and some are low. One sound may be loud while another is soft. You might enjoy listening to rap music, but another person thinks it's just annoying noise. How you perceive a sound depends on many things, including the characteristics of the sound waves. Pitch and volume are two characteristics of sound. Click each image to find out more. Pitch is the measure of how high or low we think a sound is. A flute has a high pitch, while a tuba has a low pitch. A guitar has strings of different thicknesses. Each string plays a sound with a different pitch. The guitar player can change the lengths of the strings to produce sounds of different pitch. The pitch of a sound depends on the frequency of the sound wave. A sound with a higher pitch has a higher frequency. A sound with a lower pitch has a lower frequency. When frequency increases, wavelength decreases. When frequency decreases, wavelength increases.
Now, open your book, page 32. You will find a figure. In this figure, represent approximate sound frequencies heard by animals. For a human, we can hear the range of hearing. We can hear from 20 hertz frequency to 20,000 hertz, 20,000 hertz frequency. okay, hertz. But some animals, they can hear more than 20,000 hertz. Yeah, for example, the dog, the bat, the dolphin, they can hear more. Um, you can check your book and see the approximate sound frequencies for these animals, and listen carefully to this video.
Animals and humans have different ranges of hearing. Some animals, such as elephants, can hear lower sounds than humans can hear. Some animals, such as dogs, can hear much higher sounds than we can hear. That's why you can't hear some dog whistles, but dogs can.
And now let's talk about how the sound loudness depends on the amplitude. Actually, the loudness is a measure of how well a sound can be heard. Okay, so this one is depends on what? On the amplitude. What is the amplitude here? So loudness is a characteristic of sound that can be calculated from the intensity of the sound wave. Okay, to understand how the loudness, it depends on the amplitude and the energy or the amount of energy that is transferred. Listen to this part.
Loudness describes how quiet or noisy a sound is. A loud sound has more energy than a quiet one has. Whispering doesn't take much energy, but yelling does. The intensity of a sound is a measure of how much energy the sound wave has. Sound waves with greater intensity or more energy are louder. The amplitude of a sound wave measures the maximum distance that the particles of the medium vibrate from their rest position. The greater the amplitude of the sound wave, the greater its intensity. Amplitude does not depend on frequency or wavelength. A sound with greater amplitude carries more energy, so louder sounds have greater amplitude.
So, for example, when you strike a drum harder, you increase the amplitude of the sound wave. The greater the amplitude, the louder the sound. The smaller the amplitude, the softer the sound. Okay? So how can we increase, or how, if there is any way to increase, is there any way to increase the loudness? If you want to increase the loudness, actually you can use the amplifier. So the amplifier receives sound signals in the form of electric current. The amplifier increases the sound wave's energy by increasing the wave's amplitude, which makes the sound louder. This is how the amplifier is working. This is the concept of amplifier. The first step, receives the sound signals in the form of electric current. Then the amplifier increases the sound wave energy by increasing the wave amplitude. Okay. This figure actually represent, or it shows how the amplifier will increase the amplitude. Look at the second one. The first one, a little softer sound, have a smaller amplitude. Okay, but if you look at the second figure, it's with the amplifier, louder sounds have larger amplitude. Okay. So if you have any question, you can send me on portal. I'll put a worksheet for this lesson. You will find it on the portal. Thank you for listening.